All right, I'd like to call our Finance and Audit meeting for October 5th to order at 8:30 a.m. We have all members present. We have minutes for approval. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Teresa and Brian, any questions, concerns? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. We have public comment. We have someone who's so kindly handed me a board. All right, first up, Lindsay. Sure, come on down wherever you want. Let me get my stopwatch ready here, because you know we don't have the fancy schmancy timer thing that on the other thing. So.
I already timed myself.
All right, ready? Go ahead.
Great. My name is Lindsay Keisman. I'm a board member and the treasurer for the McHenry County Mental Health Board. I'm here today to represent the board, and I'd like to make 3 points. First, I'm grateful to the many county board members who have spoken to us and our executive director over the last couple of months seeking clarification on our board's recommendation for a $2.5 million budget increase. Thank you for your time, consideration, and time spent speaking to us and seeking answers to all of your questions. Second, I've heard there may be some confusion in how we allocate funds to agencies where the dollars are spent. While we do fund agencies who serve multiple counties, I want to make clear that every agency that we award dollars to do spend those dollars on McHenry County residents only. So while there are some agencies that are based out of different counties, they either have programs that are serviced in McHenry County, or if their programs are based in other counties, they only use our dollars when McHenry County residents are utilizing those programs and services. Third, I'd like to discuss the importance of increasing our funding directly to the levy. While we'd be grateful for any creative funding solutions, we will also have to take the sustainability long-term of those creative funding solutions into account. Funding directly to our levy allows us to consider funding programs and services in the community that may need ongoing support versus a short-term infusion of dollars. We would absolutely welcome additional dollars such as cannabis or ARPA dollars, and would work diligently to make sure they are used on short-term projects or to help increase providers by supporting them through short-term startup support. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Okay, next is, sorry, wrong thing. Is it Kirk?
Yep.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Kurt Donald, and I'm here to comment on the requested $2.5 million for mental health services. If you read the U.S. News and World Report, Healthiest Communities 2022, you find that McHenry County is listed as one of the healthiest counties in the United States, ranked 216 out of 31 U.S. counties. In order to receive this accolade, one of the criteria reviewed is population health. McHenry County received its second highest rating in this category, second only to public safety. If you review the housing category, you find working adults are spending 67.5 hours weekly to afford their homes. This is 27 hours over the national median. This is the main cause of mental stress in McHenry County. Property taxes are up, car insurance is up, homeowners insurance is up, gasoline taxes are up, school enrollment costs are up. Taxes in Illinois are tearing families apart. The taxes are unsustainable, so much so that U-Haul has listed Illinois as the #1 state for outmigration. This request for an additional $2.5 million isn't a one-time ask. It will more than likely remain in the budget year after year, causing additional stress. In my opinion, this request is an attempt to politicize the issue by orchestrating the demand that McHenry County add to the inflationary woes of operating outside its means. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Lori.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Former colleagues, long time no see. Didn't anticipate being back here, but here I am. So Lori Parrish, resident of Crystal Lake. I wear a former board member, county board member hat. I also wear the hat of mother, wife, crisis interventionist for 10 years, school educator for 20 years, and now the last 3 years I've been involved in the not-for-profit sector with social services. So I'm here just to talk quickly on a couple of items related to the mental health board funding. First, I want to thank you all, including the staff. It's been amazing to watch the progression of the budget conversations in the past 5 years. I thought the presentation last week was fabulous. So I thank the staff for the time they put into that, because having been on the other side, certainly understand that this is a very challenging, very arduous time for all of you. So Chairman Scala, Finance, appreciate all of the work that you're doing. The points I wanted to make were just some clarification about some narrative that I've heard through the last several months. I wanted to just identify and reiterate that none of the organizations that are funded by the Mental Health Board dollars are fully funded by the Mental Health Board dollars. Another hat that I do wear is that I am honored and privileged to be able to work for one of the funded agencies. So I want to be completely transparent, but this is about larger need for services. So none of those organizations are fully funded by the Mental Health Board dollars. All of the organizations are fundraising, holding fundraising events, seeking private donations, and seeking other grants. And they do this arduously throughout the year to add to any dollars that the county is generously able to provide. A second point is that of the 30+ organizations in the Mental Health Board Network Council, many of them work together to look at closing the gap in services, as well as finding efficiencies and things that they can do better, not only as their organization, but that we can do better across the network. And as Lindsay already mentioned, the funds that are utilized are strictly for the residents in McHenry County. The last thing I'd like to just request is that you maybe reframe or add a frame of your consideration for these funds from a different perspective. You're investing in economic development. When you're investing in the human beings of this county who are going to be able to not only survive but thrive and give back by purchasing homes, working in the county, shopping in the county, educating their kids in the county, that will help all of us thrive. So I want to thank you all for your time. And lastly, I would like to just identify you or someone you know or someone you love has possibly needed the services and maybe they chose not to pursue them, or maybe you know someone who has utilized the services of one or more of the organizations that are funded by the Mental Health Board. So on behalf of those individuals as well, I thank you. Thank you for your time today in your deliberations.
Thank you. Last is Carolyn.
Good morning. As Carolyn Schofield, and I am the County Board Liaison to the Mental Health Board, and so in speaking with several of the board members after the last Committee of the Whole meeting, I wanted to follow up on some additional information. From what I gather, there may be some discussions today on the Mental Health Board budget and possibly increasing it either to the proposed $522,000 as was presented last week, or $1 million for an aggregate county level extension of 2.5%. Based on this assumption, I would like to share some of the allocation recommendations that the Mental Health Board staff proposed to the Mental Health Board at our last meeting. While the Mental Health Board has not yet voted on the funding allocations, the staff has put forward suggested program funding based on their evaluations and various budget scenarios that will be discussed at our meeting later this month. If the budget increases to $1,000 instead of $500,000, staff suggests the additional funds be utilized for the following organizations to get them closer to their requested amounts. An additional $100,000 to the McHenry County Sheriff's Police Social Work Program, an additional $50,000 to Northern Illinois Medical Center Psychiatric Emergency Services Operations and Aftercare, $50,000 each to the 22nd Judicial Court's 2 new programs of animal-assisted therapy and DUI court, an additional $42,000 to New Directions A Way Out program as well as an additional $25,000 to their sober living program, an additional $25,000 to Greater Family Health Behavioral Health Integration, and to Independence Health Therapy an additional $25,000 for psychiatric paid for performance. Again, I would like to stress that these have not been voted on, but are examples of how the additional funds could be utilized. And I have that information here, so I will leave. I have 8 or 9 copies here, so if you guys want to see, so you didn't, I saw some of you jotting it down, but just wanted to give you an example of where those additional funds could be used. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, that was all who signed up for public comment this morning. Next on the agenda is member comments. Are there members that have comments? None? Okay. We are on to routine consent agenda, items that members would like pulled. Oh, Teresa. Yes, ma'am.
7175.
7175. Any others? Yes.
Yep, I have to abstain for 7.3 and 7.4.
Okay, I'll just, Debbie, can you mark her down as abstain for those two? Yep. Okay. Any others? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion to approve routine consent agenda items 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. Kelly makes that, Larry seconds. Go to vote. Brian?
Yes.
Terry?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Motion carries. Okay, we have 2 items left, 7-1. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Teresa? Kelly seconds. Teresa, you pulled this one?
So, yeah, after yesterday's discussion of admin services, I was like, oh, I should have asked. My understanding, this is probably to Peter. My understanding was that if we don't make the agreement, the state will make it for us. Is that, I read that correct? Did I interpret it correctly?
I don't want to oversimplify this, but
Yeah.
the cable industry has effectively lobbied over the years that
Right.
if you can't reach an agreement with the cable franchise company, they can pull a state blueprint or a template
Right.
off the shelf and say, this is what we're going to work with. So we've been trying for some years to get Comcast to work with our local cable ordinance, which in itself is a little dated, and we kind of just said, you know what, we're going to be done. We see Comcast being poised to make a pretty big investment in the western part of the county, and I think that's more important than continuing to try and work with our old document. So we're going to recommend that we go ahead with this version. This is not Comcast's agreement. This is really IML's agreement. The Illinois Municipal League crafted this document 4 or 5 years ago. Is that right, Adam?
A little more than that.
More than that. And it's an agreement that Lake County uses and about 100 other municipalities uses, so I'm very comfortable with it.
Okay. Did we get anything out of it? What's the best part for us?
Revenue.
Oh, all right.
We do get, I think we are about $600,000 a year in revenue this year just from the unincorporated Comcast agreements, or all of our unincorporated cable agreements, and really poised for that to expand pretty dramatically if we can get more homes hardwired with cable. And I think that's going to happen when the state frees up the dollars that have been available for fiber.
Anything else?
I'm done.
Okay, yes.
So, I guess I need to go listen to admin services. But, so is this something that we've only looked at Comcast, or have we looked at other cable companies?
For this agreement, we're only talking with Comcast. We will speak with Frontier.
Frontier and Charter as well. This is for Comcast agreement, so it has to be signed.
Adam, can you come up here,
Okay,
please?
yeah, sure. Sorry. So this agreement is for Comcast and will only be for Comcast, but we're working with the 2 other providers that do provide service to unincorporated areas, Charter and Frontier. They would have a similar agreement hopefully coming in the next month or 2. This is just to give Comcast the permission to use the right-of-way. The others would be for Charter and Frontier.
Comcast's agreement that's out of date right now.
Correct. And
So
that
it's
would
not
cover
really-
that would cover all the unincorporated areas once they're all done.
Okay, so there's not really a competition here when it comes to.
This is really just for the territory Comcast serves.
Got it.
And Comcast is one of 2 players that has put in applications that we've partnered with for the federal dollars that are passing through the state.
Okay.
Any other questions by committee? Okay, we'll go to vote then. Terry?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Myself, yes, motion carries. We're on to item 7.5, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make the motion.
Teresa? Larry seconds. Teresa, you pulled this
All
one?
right, so I pulled it as the designee from this committee that I should report back to what we did at Senior Services Grant Funding. And I know that Chair of the committee, Pam Altoff, did speak to this at the COW, but I wanted to also point out that what we have done is done a $50,000 contingency fund in case an agreement can't be made for transportation services. So in the past, the Senior Service Grant Commission has funded 3 different transportation programs that are within the county. One is from a town and 2 are from townships, or a village and 2 townships. And a few members, Pam, Chair Altoff, and Scott Headings, and a few others, and Matt Kunkel is on Transportation Committee for that designee, are working on seeing if dollars from the transportation budget can be used for those programs, so the Senior Service Grant funding is freed up to reallocate back to the programs that are we would be willing to fund at a higher level if we have that $50,000. So I wanted to make sure that I had reported back to us. I do approve the funding, but I did want to report back what the plan is. The plan is to look to see if transportation dollars can be found to cover township and a town program.
Any other questions by committee members? Okay, we'll go to vote then. Kelly?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Larry?
Yes.
Teresa?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Terry? Myself, yes, motion carries. Okay, that finishes routine consent agenda. We're on to item 8, which is the budget. So board members that are here, if you want to come up here, or out there that want to come up here, I'd grab a chair.
Space next to me if you get
Come
a chair.
on, come on down. So in thinking about best way to tackle what we have before us, which is the budget and the budget discussion, I would like to start off with the recommendation that was made by staff and myself and Chairman Bueller. And what I'd like to do is to try and focus the area on the segments of the budget that people are not, so there's areas of the budget that people I think find acceptable and don't have an issue with, and then there's areas where people do have issues with, either higher or lower. So what I'd like to do is kind of informally kind of go around, and I would like to, so do y'all have the recommended?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So I'll give you a second to pull it out so that we're all looking at the same thing. Hey, Carrie, is it possible for you to dump that up on the screen, please?
I'll take it. That is all.
It's a neat technical.
Gary?
You might as well just kind of sit here so that we can. Okay, so up on the screen is the recommended budget that we had talked about. So what I'd like to do, if you can indulge me, is go through the levy request section. And what I'd like to do is, so there's 14 board members here. So what I'd like to do is if you haven't, so I'm going to go through each levy. And I'm just going to, first one I'm going to say is corporate levy. So if you have an issue with what is being recommended, either higher or lower, at this point, that's not germane. I would like you to raise your hand if you have an issue with what's being recommended. And then I'm just gonna kind of take a tally here. So like if nobody raises their hand for, one of these, then we don't need to discuss it, right? Because everyone's in agreement that that line of the levy is fine. And I'm trying to get a sense of where everybody is at in regard to the different levies, which then make up our budget. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, all right. So corporate, does anyone have issues with corporate? We got 1, 2, 2, okay.
This being corporate? You're calling this?
Corporate, the first line,
Yes.
okay. All right, next is IMRF. None, okay. County highway? None. Bridge? None. Mental health? Okay. Hey, surprisingly, that one has a lot, okay. Matching? Okay. Liability? Social Security? VAC?
Which stands for, just to clarify,
Social Security?
VAC.
Valley High?
No, it's Veterans.
Or Veterans Assistance, I'm sorry.
Sorry, not
Yeah, no, you're right, I apologize. Nursing home? That's Valley High. And then senior citizen. Okay, so we have two that had corporate, and then we have mental health. So let's start off with corporate. So the two that raised your hand with corporate tax, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so just in, sorry.
No, go ahead.
So just in general, I noticed when I was looking at the 2023 actuals from versus where we were talking about, I know we had discussed the salary section. I believe at this point, if we had spent what was budgeted for various salaries, we should be at approximately 41 million year to date. We're at 32 or 26, 27 million. And I guess, without even making a suggestion, I just wanted to know what accounts for that difference between why we're roughly 10 months into the fiscal year, but we've only spent half what we budgeted for in 2023.
So did you get the question answered about what that's through?
So I think I got an email from you on Sunday saying that the year-to-date was updated daily,
So,
or
well,
no?
so there was an issue with Questica and the custom column.
Okay.
So what I prepared, because I thought that may come up. The integration is working, it's just how that custom column is being shown is short.
Okay.
So if we look at general fund, so this is through the 9/1 payroll.
Which accounts through August, I assume, or?
Yeah, so
Okay.
it's payroll 20 out of 26
Okay.
is what's reflected in here.
So that's the accurate amount?
Yes.
Okay. So okay,
The Questica amounts are accurate too, it's just through 6 months.
through 6 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
So to finish answering that question,
This is in line, I think. with
no,
that.
what I know, but I'm just but she can,
No, I apologize for that.
Carrie can, so as part of finance committee, we get the differential over or under on different items, so where is that falling as far as, I'm
So
assuming?
if you just annualize this number, then we're pretty close to where we projected for budget.
Pretty close, like hand grenades or horseshoes? Close, how
We're
Uh,
about 300,000 off,
$300,000.
roughly.
Okay.
That's real close, considering your raises.
Horseshoes.
Yeah.
Horseshoes.
Horseshoes, okay. All right, so did that answer that question, Eric?
Yeah, that definitely answers that
Okay.
question.
All right.
Because, I mean, it's adjusted almost $17 million upwards from what I was looking at,
Yes, I
so-
apologize
No, that's
for.
fine.
Yeah, that was a big number.
Was there anything else on the corporate side?
One thing can I address with personnel? So the nice thing with Questica is we used to do a lot of the personnel budgeting on spreadsheets for each department, and then that led to challenges, of course, with step movements and open positions. With Questica, we can actually get down to the position detail and then even the employee that's attached to that position, like so we can get accurate for their health insurance. And it also helps us to look at positions that have been open for a long period and maybe we don't want to budget for them versus, you know, departments are constantly having turnover with positions.
Right.
So it helps us to get pretty accurate with actual. And if we're not, it's easier to figure out why we're not. So it's a good tool for personnel.
Well, then, I guess, just looking at it briefly, for commodities and capital outlay, what's the, is there something coming up? Is that anticipated? They're at about 50% of what we budgeted for. I don't know if that's because we have a big purchase coming down the line, or?
So though, that I'll have to get back to you on. These are hard because a lot of our expenses are pretty consistent, but we also have a lot that are just one time a year, or sometimes they're audit entries.
Right.
So it's hard, but I can see, because even if we look at prior year, like it's fairly close to budget, so I can look to see what still has not happened yet.
Okay.
Can that be shared with everybody?
Yeah. No, any questions that are asked, I would ask Carrie, you to just share it with the full board so that everybody has an understanding and knowledge.
Yeah, we're all friends here.
Eric, did you have anything else?
No, not at this time.
Okay, that's fine. Terry, what did you have?
I wanted to understand, for example, we have about 3.4 million that we're holding for open headcount recs in personnel. Is that included in this number for 2023?
So open, what we budget for open position allowance, are
Yeah.
you saying?
Yeah, what we were given yesterday in admin for open headcount recs with the
We have
payroll
60
burden.
We have 62 vacant positions, and those would cost us about $3 million.
So that's what I was talking about a little, so,
Is that in 2023? I mean,
so
we
what,
already-
we don't, some of the positions that have been open for a long time, we don't budget for them. But
Let's talk about policy, because there's a policy in place for that exact.
yes.
Okay.
So did you talk about, I don't want to repeat myself if you talked about that already.
No.
Okay, so the policy is in place that states that if a position is open and is not actively trying to be filled, then after 6 months, that position automatically gets eliminated, and whatever department that position was in would have to come back to the board to get that position reappointed. That position stays open if it's longer than 6 months, if the department is actively trying to fill it but unable to. So, and not to pick on Tom, but IT staff is very difficult to find, and so sometimes some of those positions stay open longer just because we're trying to find the person that has the qualifications that we need. And so if it's actively being pursued to try and fill it, but it just is taking longer than 6 months, then Administrator Pete over here has the authority to kind of override that policy and say, okay, well, we're actively trying to find someone, we just haven't found someone yet. So policy states that after 6 months, if they're not actively trying to fill it, per policy, it's gone, and they can come back and request it again. So in budgetary purposes, we budget for those open positions in the anticipation that they're being filled or are supposed to be filled. If not, then they get eliminated, and theoretically that extra budget, if it was budgeted for, would then go back down to the bottom line as extra, revenue at the end of the year for that area. Does that answer the?
Well, then why are we not following policy?
Should I show you what the sheet, you want to see the sheet from
I
admin?
got it right here.
Sure, that's fine.
You've got the paper version?
Yeah.
Okay. With the updated payroll burden?
Not the updated
Because it's
payroll burden.
3.54 million. 3.54 million.
So what was given to admin? I don't,
3 point, well.
no, I'm just asking what was, because I've
This.
okay,
This was given to admin.
I understand, but what I'm asking Carrie is, so what was that?
That's our, we receive it as services, we receive monthly updates quarterly on open positions and cost, and that was provided by Cheryl.
Okay, so
yesterday.
so Carrie, you didn't present that?
No.
Okay, Cheryl did. So Cheryl,
It's a vacancy report, so on there I show what positions are vacant,
yep,
how long they've been vacant, what the cost is for that position, and now we're adding the additional IMRF, FICA, and health insurance additional costs, which brought it up to, it was like 2 million something in base wages, and with the FICA, IMRF, and insurance, it came up to 3 million something.
Was that just general fund?
That was all funds.
That was all funds. Majority of our vacancies are in the Valley High Fund,
Correct.
and that is not what's on the screen.
20 to 62 are over 6 months.
okay. So is there positions on this sheet that would not be in compliance with policy then?
There are some that have been vacant for more than 6 months. Some of those we've actively been recruiting. Some of them are being held. For example, in the sheriff's department, we have to wait for the academy. The academy is not happening until December. So we have people lined up to go to the academy in December. We're not going to eliminate those positions.
Well, so again, there's reasons,
Yes.
that's the whole
Yes.
purpose of the situation. If there's reasons for why that position isn't filled, then Pete has the ability to
Yes.
say that that's acceptable. It's a situation where if no one's trying to do anything about it and it just sits there just because someone wants a head count, that's where we, as the board, made the decision to eliminate that. So are there, I guess, so I'm asking the question then, is there any of these positions that fall outside of policy that they're not pursuing that theoretically should be or should have been eliminated?
Not that I'm aware of. The only one that may come close, Tom was out of state when I was doing the report. There was an admissions coordinator that's been vacant for 17 months, and I was unable to get clarity on why he's not actively recruiting for that yet. So that's the only position that, in my mind, is in question.
Okay.
So there's 20 positions that are beyond 6 months, and 12 of those positions are beyond 10 months. So just to say.
Okay.
So, and so that would preclude anybody waiting for, loyalty programs or certain education. I'm just saying, it's like we're holding a marker for this in our current budget and in our forecasted budget for ghost money. And so it's not very accurate, and I think that's a lot of money. I think 3.54 million is a lot of money. So when you look at 20 positions out of 62, that could be a third. It's a million here, a million there. It's only taxpayer money. I'm not, people don't do things for taxpayers, they do things for themselves. So we just have to keep that in mind as we're looking at this and we're looking at what we're doing, trying to increase the levy in a recession that's going to get as bad as 2008 shortly.
Okay.
When we budget for personnel, we do anticipate a certain amount of vacancy. Can you talk about that policy?
Yeah, so in the budget policy, and when I presented non-departmental at last finance committee, this just applies to general fund. We hold back from all general fund departments, regardless of how many positions are filled or not. 2% from the large departments and 1%, and we put it into non-departmental. We actually take the total, divide it in half, and put it in non-departmental. Because all departments have some amount of turnover, whether it's a few weeks when they have an open position. So we do take that into account. And then at the end of the year, if a department's over budget, as long as they're only over budget by the amount that we held back, we move it from non-departmental and back into theirs. Okay. So there is a level of
awareness. There's an
yes.
awareness that on any given day, Not every seat is filled.
Yes.
In fact, it's been worse in the last few years.
So to clarify, that, which is, very wise and would be normal protocol, and I respect that and understand that. Are these numbers incorporated into that? Or are these separate somewhere, this 3.54, which is the actual payroll burden of what it would cost to employ these positions if we had all 62 filled?
So if we were to fill every single one of those positions, within the next month, we would go over budget because we don't consider every single one of those.
Okay, so what you're saying is we don't have these actual numbers in there. We have the, normal responsible
Correct.
planning for
Yes.
turnover.
Yes. But the list obviously means like HR is actively trying to recruit for those positions, so it's kind of two separate lists.
Okay. But just to, and I'm like, this is important. It really is important. Understand the economy that we're working in and what's going on in the labor market, which I may know a little bit about. We're talking about 1/3 of these positions not being within policy, and at the very least, 12%. And so if we have a good reason, okay. Otherwise, I just think that we should make certain that we don't have, I don't like the idea of ghost positions sitting out there because then it could become real expensive, so.
Well, I think that's why the board created the policy. And I wouldn't classify them as ghost positions. I disagree with that connotation. It's positions that are not filled. Ghost positions to me are corrupt government ways of doing things that create positions. And I disagree with that connotation.
Okay, that's true.
Anything else on the corporate side?
I do have a question about the supplementals. Were these already determined which ones are gonna be agreed to and are already in the budget?
Yeah, so the ones that we passed out are the recommended ones, and those are built into these.
All of these are.
The recommended one?
Yes.
Yeah. So again, remember there's the general fund ones and then there's the other fund ones.
One size general.
The transportation ones are need attention. I said the
Yes, I'm sorry.
supplementals on transportation still need attention, and we're gonna talk about that with transportation committee at the end of the month, but they're not competing with them.
Okay.
Okay, so then we're gonna move on to the mental health board budget. So there was a lot of hands that were raised for this one. So I'd like to refine that a little bit more. So if you are comfortable with the recommendation, can you raise your hand if you're comfortable with the recommendation? So we got.
I'm agreeable either, I'm agreeable, so. I'll raise for both.
Okay, well, you're gonna throw things off.
I just won't vote.
Okay, all right. If you would like it decreased from the recommended 525, please raise your hand. Okay, we got one, and if you'd like it raised, please raise your hand. Okay.
Discussion.
Huh?
I'd like the discussion.
Yeah, I hear you, and that's fine. I'm just trying to understand where everybody, relatively speaking, is at. Okay, so the majority of the people here raise their hand that they would like it raised. What numbers are you thinking about in relation to that? So it's recommended at 525. You'd like to see something higher than 525. What does that, put some numbers to that for me. Brian?
Well, I'd like to see it closer to $1 million. I don't believe that that's practical at this point. I'm going to be frank about it. But I would like to see it at least above 850,000. So
Okay.
that's kind of what I'd like to speak to that at an appropriate time, Mr. Chairman.
No, that's fine. I'm trying to wrap my head around where everyone's thoughts are at. So anyone else?
I would concur, I apologize, I would concur with Brian. I too would like to see it closer to $1 million, but I don't think it's practical at this particular time. So if we could get close to 850, that would be great.
Okay. Anyone else? Lou, sorry. Yes.
I would like to see it at $1 million.
Okay. Anyone else?
I would like to see it, I like 850 at the minimum, but I would prefer $1 million.
Okay.
I concur with Brian. I mean, I think that I would like to get closer to $1 million, but I do know that that's a challenge. And so I think if we could get it to 850, that would be great.
For those that wanted to see it decreased, what is your thoughts there? Go ahead.
Well, I guess my only question is, it looks like they're budgeting for $170,000 more being spent on computer technology is an increase from the 2023 budget. So one, actual, I think I'm looking at the correct, updated actual 2023. They spent $51,000, they had a $100,000 budget. So I guess my question would be, why are we increasing it by $250,000?
So you're looking, what are you looking at, just so that
I'm
we're
looking at
clear?
the mental health funds, the administration capital outlay for computer technology. 2023, we budgeted for $100,000. To date, they've spent $52,000. And for the 2024 budget, we're looking at a $270,000 budget for capital outlay on computer equipment. So
They had a supplemental request
okay,
that's on the big sheet.
and the supplemental request is
Yes.
okay.
Where do you have those numbers?
On the on the updated 2024 budget through October 2nd, 2023. I got it from Carrie. I can forward it to you. Or
That's the mental health board budget itself?
By line item.
by line item, yeah.
Is it in the dashboard or no?
It is not.
It's not on the dashboard?
No, and we don't put it out into open book until we put it on public display, only because things are changing.
So
Just to clarify, there's de minimis increases in some line items, there's de minimis increases in some line items, and then the bulk of the 2024 budget difference comes from, it looks like 1.3 million roughly in client services, and then the $170,000 increase to computer technology. So that right there is let's just call it $1.5 million of the increase is coming from. So that's what I wanted to look at. We're more than doubling by a pretty significant amount the computer technology outlay, and then I assume obviously the 1.3 million comes from, right, and I apologize, not 1.3, 1.03 million for client services. And I'm not proposing.
So is that something we can put up there? I mean, so we know, instead of trying to listen to them. And if you have questions, they're out there, so you could ask them what that technology is for.
Yeah. I was hoping. Yeah, that's what I was trying to do.
Okay.
yeah, I just, is anyone from, you want to answer that? Or
The door project that we're aligning with the county.
you'd have to come up here and speak so that,
If you look at the supplemental, it's the door project that we are aligning with the county. We're going to go into the county system and use the same door project. So that's all the automated lock doors in that system, and also two new servers. So that's all in this, should be in the supplemental information.
And that accounts for the 170,000 increase.
Hey, Scott.
I can go to the 850 to 1 mil.
I agreed with, yeah.
Okay.
Please, thank you, sorry.
did you have anything else, Eric?
And then
No, other than if we only spend 52,000 and the supplementals are gonna be 170,000, I'd like to see it based on, I guess, actuals plus that 170,000 in supplementals for the reduction.
So it'd be 42,000 less like then?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything or?
Yeah, I do. So during the process, from the time that I really engaged in looking at the Mental Health Board and their requests and expenditures, no data-driven case has been built for increasing the levy. There's been a lot of propaganda and emotional manipulation stating that the suicide rate has increased by 72% in 8 times without looking at the actual data. When
Can't hear her.
teenage suicides have dropped by 66% in the county, and we're talking about a situation where our county spends 4 times the amount of any other county in the state of Illinois. And then when I look at the general funds and then I look at the reserves, they have quite a healthy budget, and it does not, you talk about affecting mental health. I think the public comment regarding what's going on with the cost of living, inflation, and what's happening is going to have a much more detrimental impact than it would be beneficial for the Mental Health Board. And even some of the presentations that were made to us from different organizations showed, did not build a case for good management. And so it just seems to be not data-driven and manipulative. And I don't appreciate it. And I absolutely do not support it. And then if you do ask questions, then it's intimated that you've never been affected by mental health, which, for heaven's sakes, everyone has. Suicides, the whole gamut. And it's not that you're being a heartless person because you want to be a good steward of the tax dollars of McHenry County. This is money that's coming in from households that are working hard to support their families, pay for their housing, their food, their transportation. And we just talked about the possibility of being able to put on a referendum for a sales tax increase to fund mental health. That hasn't been investigated at all. And I truly believe that this is emotional and irresponsible to increase their levy at this time. They simply have not built a case.
Okay, for those that either wanted to keep the dollars at the 525 or raise it. So I guess looking more towards the people that wanted to raise it, what is your recommendation on how to go about doing that? Is it to increase the amount of CPI that we're taking in order to take those dollars and achieve that? Or is there another means by which you're looking at trying to increase those dollars? Go ahead.
I had thought perhaps there might be a combination approach that might be taken with regards to some transportation dollars, to be blunt about it. But the more I think about that, I think we all acknowledge the fact that there's a very large need in transportation. And I think it would be somewhat disingenuous if we go ahead and increase, as we have done, the fuel tax because of needs in transportation and then try to siphon off a portion of that. So I've kind of backed off of that particular approach. So I'm interested in an increase in the CPI. And that's what I would like to present today. And again, I'm just answering your question right now, but I'll be happy to.
Well, this sounds like a good time to go ahead and present whatever your idea is or what your thoughts are.
I have a paper here, and this paper is just simply, right, Carrie's effort, if you will, because she's the one that put the Excel sheet together. And I know that it's up here, and we can ask her to do that anytime, but to make it a little bit easier for everybody to look at in totality and to make comparisons, she was kind enough to provide that Excel sheet for me so that I can plug in the numbers myself, and I presented them here. Please know that if there are errors on this, I hope that there are not, but if there are errors, they are mine and they are not Carrie's. So please do not try to project anything on Carrie. It would be my scrivener's error if there are challenges there. I want to go back and just quickly say, I think the staff did a remarkable job, and Chair as well, a remarkable job in terms of the presentation to the committee to hold the other day, and I truly, again, appreciate that effort. Very pleased with everything, except the mental health projections here, and I would like to see an increase, as I've already indicated. What you have before you here provides us what was previously presented, and then kind of goes into some specificity with regards to where the in-betweens actually exist. And so before I get into that, I want to say that I do concur with some of my colleagues that have said that I do think that there was a strong need push that was an emotional plea on behalf of a lot of our service agencies out there. I think that we should say how much we appreciate their work on behalf of the residents of our community. I think that we can agree that there is a large need which exists, and that we need to do what we can to try to meet that need. I'm disappointed, and I'm disappointed in the fact that we didn't have any, as colleague Reno indicated, any definitional, quantitative analysis of that need. And that's something that we have to have as we look to the future. In fact, I'm going to say, if you turn on the back side of this, I'm presenting, and I will come back to my own preference where I think we should be, but I'm presenting some conditions that regardless of where we are, whether we're looking at this 525 or whether we're looking at a higher level, I think that on an annual basis, September 1st, this board deserves a report from Mental Health Board that would say that we have an identification of what the individual service agencies' missions and contributions to our situation are. What are those? Because right now, we have these agencies, and they're all doing a great job, and I appreciate it, and it was, politically, they did a great job of getting the word out and moving us in the right direction. But it was an emotional plea. We didn't have the data that we needed. So first I want to know how all these agencies fit into the larger network. I don't know what all of their work is, and I think that we need to see that. The second thing is, I think that we have to have an identification of what the financial contributions are to the whole board. Put this out in writing so that we can all see this before us as we're discussing this. And I would like to know the number of clients that are served per agency. I'd like to know the current demand for services per agency and the relevant aggregate outcome data per agency that would justify continued support. I think we deserve that as a board. And finally, I believe that we need to have some relevant demographic information. There was an effort this morning to tell us that there was some confusion that yes, the money is staying here in McHenry County, but that wasn't the impression that we were given in some of the presentations. So I want to see that absolutely, demographically, what percentage is going to McHenry County, what are the ages, the ethnicities, the veteran status. This information is all out there. You have to have this if you're reporting on grants. So we deserve that kind of information. So regardless, on an annual basis, we deserve this type of reporting to be able to justify the contributions that are made. Pam, you have a question or comment that you'd like me to?
Yes, sort of, building on what you said. As one of the major authors at the state level for budgeting for results, that statement is more accurate than you know. If you receive any federal dollars or any state dollars, you are required to provide that type of data information about what you're doing with your dollars. And it's audited every year. This is not a big ask. That's all I wanted to say. This is not a huge ask.
Thank you. So first of all,
I want to continue my conversation.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to add on to that. It wasn't a hardship.
So I do believe that we need this type of information. Now, don't get me wrong. I appreciate the commentary from the service groups, but I think it's important that we have this type of information. So from that particular point, regardless, I think we need to look at other percentages. So I just did this again on a comparative level to try to give Carrie some relaxation of her fingers here so she doesn't have to be sweating and worrying about getting this all up here so we can all see it. I just went ahead and plugged the figures in. Everything above the scenarios down to the recommended, those were the ones that were in our packet, right? Then the recommended came from staff at 1.95, that's new growth plus percent increase in CPI. That's the 525, right? And then I looked at other options here, and I just took it to the 2.43, 4, 5, and 6, all the way down. You can see, if you look at that information, the way I presented it here initially, that I had a total outcome for mental health based upon the program, but then I also just looked at change from new growth, which is that 118,483, that's there, right? And then what we would be getting as a result of a change from the CPI on top of that to come up to that total. So that's easy math, you can figure that out on your own, so I didn't continue it all the way down, but it's there, correct? My thoughts were that we need to be, again, at least 850 and someplace closer to $1 million. So I just kind of put it out here. I would be preferring, this is my personal thoughts, I would be preferring that we stay at the 2.49 level, which is on the back page, 2.49. That would bring in 911,540. That's my preference, and the reason I say that's my preference is because of two things. It is respectful of the fact that there is a demand out there, one, and I think we're trying to get as close as we can to the $1 million. However, we also have to be practical in terms of two other things, and that is, what is our capacity as a board to be willing to politically support this particular level? And just as when you go to the gas station, it's no different than that marketing level, a little bit below the 2.5, if you will, but yet getting you closer to what you need. It markets better to the public at large in terms of what is that growth opportunity. We know that when it goes high as 5, it's too high. It's just plain too high. But we have neglected the smaller incremental increases for all the reasons that we all know and understand and support in terms of trying to be mindful of the burden that is placed upon taxpayers by all units of local government. But I still think, and I go back to my argument that I've made multiple times before this body, and that is that you cannot continue to meet inflationary pressures, you cannot continue to meet increasing demand by cutting resources. You can't do that. You can't cut your way out of those types of needs or demands. What you have to do is to look at increasing revenue. I think it is respectful to our public and our taxpayers to keep it below 2.5. That's what I'm trying to do. I think it's marketable. I think it's easily explainable to the people that we serve, and so that's why I'm recommending that level. Now, it's here for open discussion, but that was my effort, and it's my intent to support that level of 2.49.
Okay.
Well, I do, Brian, thank you, and I do want to say, from being on the inside of the system, every time an agency submits an application, they first have to demonstrate how they met outcomes from the previous year and set outcomes for the new contract. So that's not new. That information is there and available, and I think easy to retrieve. No one gets funded unless they've demonstrated that they've met certain outcomes, especially the ones set up in the previous contract. And that's not just mental health money, that's coalition money and VAWA and criminal justice. Every funder requires that. So, and it gets monitored every month. Do you meet those targets or don't you? If you don't meet them, you have to send an explanation why you haven't met those targets. So I don't know how that information doesn't get here, but it's easy to retrieve, I would think. The second thing, the people the Mental Health Board serves are uninsured or underinsured. So these are people who do not have health care, who don't have access to mental health care. They work in our county, they're workers, but they work in companies where they work 30 hours. They fall under that level of where the company provides health care for them. And the health care under the general marketplace is even sometimes too expensive for working families. So they don't have health care and they don't have a way to get it. This is, I've heard it said that we're a wealthy county, our taxes are high. One of the responsibilities of having the ability to own property that's highly valued is that we take care of those who do not have the resources available to them. And that's our responsibility as a county. And we do that through taxes. That's how we fund government. And finally, I say if we don't give them an increase, and I'm looking at these, I would encourage the Mental Health Board to not give any money to any county programs. The Sheriff's Social Work Program, that's a county program. Redirect your funds to more targeted missional projects. The courts, it's a great program. Let the county figure out how to fund it and let them use their mental health money where it belongs if we choose not to fund it up. So, yeah, that's it.
Okay,
Can I respond to just one thing? Please.
10 seconds.
Okay, I agree with you with regards to every other agency's demanded this, so why aren't we demanding it? Why aren't we getting it?
Yeah, I don't know.
So I think that that's something that we have to have. And I want to address the sales tax later, but I'll do that in appropriate time.
Okay.
In deference and respect to the Finance Committee, I've sat pretty quiet. Now we're starting to get into the emotional weeds, taking a few deep breaths here because we have a great board, great cross-section of people here. Fortunately, my cross-section, and I'd rather fist fight or arm wrestle you guys over these decisions, make it a little faster. Take a deep breath. I also have the honor and the privilege every day getting up at 5:30 when I'm not here, lacing up my work boots and going to work with the finest, most decent human beings on the land. They are the tradesmen and the work people and the construction and the backbone of this country and this county. I'm going to use George as a little quick example. Everybody else used the time, I'm going to use a little time. George, I'm using that name because it's his real name. 24 years old, works for our company. 2 years ago, George is driving a car that he built and fixed in high school. George is working for our company. George makes good money. We pay well. George ran on Maypops last winter. To save him time, I had a foreman who has a take-home truck. I said, park by his house, keep your oil leaker on the street, bring George into work. He does. George blew a head gasket early this spring. Now George's leaker is in his landlord's driveway. I had this foreman now picking this young gentleman up and bringing him to work every day. Works hard every day. But with the increases in his food, the increase in his rent, now his landlord increased his rent yet again because his landlord is maintaining that building, that house. He is paying the mortgage on that house. He is paying the exorbitant taxes on that house, and he's eking out a profit because he's a good businessman. George is paying for that. Multiply the Georges times hundreds of thousands of Georges out here. These are the people that are carrying this tax burden. George, to this day, date, and time, 2 years later, is still riding into work with my foreman. I, thank God, have the money. I could put tires on George's car. I could have his head gasket replaced. That doesn't help George. George tells me all the time, I need more money. I need a head gasket. I need tires. Just like I hear the needs out here. Those are wants. The only thing George needs to do is go to work. George needs to work to earn a living, and we all need George to go to work to earn a living. He's 24 and single. We suck the marrow out of their bones, taxes on single people, young people. That's not the scary part. The scary part for all of us in this room is George is 24 years old doing a job I did at 17. That's when laborers started working in the past in the trades. Scarier than that, we leap from 24 years old at George to the next youngest man on our crew is 30 years old. men and women on my crew, 30 plus. We have 2, my count in there, over 60. Several in their 50s. Doing these construction jobs that literally build this whole county and pay the taxes in this county. They're doing these jobs and not making their own personal ends meet. And then there's this huge gap behind George that we've had an all-out hire with an Indeed. We put signs out, we are giving thousands of dollars in hiring bonuses. They sit up and down the roads where we work. We have no takers, no takers. We have this huge gap of young people who are, for whatever reason, smoking marijuana, drinking, whatever, crying in their beer, that they can't or won't work. I don't consider that a mental health crisis. We need to put the country back to work, but we need this year as a break. I didn't say anything because I was letting finance do it, but I'm on a no raise, no nothing status quo also up here because we need this year as a break. George needs tires for his car. George needs a head gasket. And there are hundreds of thousands of Georges out there paying the taxes that fund all of this stuff. We took a chop at the levy last year. We need to give people a break this year. I'll be as open-minded as anybody on this board next year. But right now, the working class, who I stand in my boots with every day, this isn't a summation. This isn't a guesswork. I'm working with these people. They need a break. We've given them all raises. We've done what we can do for them. Anything more, I have to go into employee welfare. And if I start putting tires on one car, I put tires on everybody's car. It's an unsustainable business model. Then I should do what I really should do now is close the doors. Let 40 people go and retire. I can afford to. I don't. Fiscally, my responsibility is still to this whole community that built what we are up to today. And I do that until the next generation takes over. Think about it, people. Just think about it for 1 year. I love Brian's plan. I love that idea. They put together something and tell us brass tacks, balls to bones, what you need in dollars and why. I love it. We've got a whole year to look at it. Maybe we do something with the sales tax. Maybe we move something along there. We need this year as a buy, as a no tax. And I'm not running for office, so this isn't a political stunt for me. Raise the taxes or don't raise the taxes, it doesn't affect my life at all. I can afford it. We need, for the people who are generating these incomes for all of us in this county, they need a buy. If we don't give them, we're at the tipping point. Thought it was hugely poignant, Pete's graphic of the finger on the scale with all the money to one side. We all know that is not doable, not sustainable. We can't hold our finger on that scale. These people need a break. 1 year, I'm asking for 1 year. Go back to what you need, figure a great plan for next year, have presentations as to where and why that money will be spent. I'm as open-minded as the next person. I will look at that. Right now, I can tell you the real world need for those people paying these taxes is real. They're not changing their automobiles, they're not changing their tires, and they're getting their butts to work. When I run out of foremen to run after them and pick up the employees, we are gonna have a real issue at that point. Think about it, 1 year, I'm asking for 1 year, for the greater good of McHenry County.
Chairman, I take issue with the generalization around young people as you're.
Okay, no.
Sorry.
No. No.
Got it.
No.
I got it.
Go ahead.
I don't think anybody here is discounting how hard people work and how hard it is to live in this county with increasing inflation and wages that are not increasing with it. I understand completely in my household. I do have children who are working very hard. So I know Lou was going to say this, generalization of the younger population, I don't find that accurate. But what I do see is that people are working hard and people are struggling. But you also have to look at the people who don't have those jobs. As was said earlier, you have people who work less than 30 hours a week. Our county employs some of those who don't have the insurance. and they have to use these services. So I have a graph here that was from the Mental Health Board, and I don't know, this was Q1 of 2023, and it was a survey of the waiting list. And at this point in time, there were 221 people on a wait list for mental health services, addiction services, detox, autism, and family services. And this is also mental and physical health. So 221 people were waiting for services. The average day, the average wait for a service was 45 days. Think about that person who is in such a mental health crisis, who doesn't have insurance. They can't get help for 45 days. And we wonder why our suicide rate is increasing. And yes, it is increasing. It's increasing higher than it has been. We're already at the rate of suicide that we were at last year, and it's projected to be higher. Then let's step back and look at the veteran suicide. I know you and I were at the Veterans Path to Hope on Friday night, and veterans commit suicide. 22 veterans a day at minimum commit suicide. 22 veterans a day. That's veterans, and that's not even what's reported. The speaker said there's many more that are not reported. We have increasing in addiction. We have increase in suicide and gun violence. Gun violence, we sat here in February, not in this room, in that room, and talked about guns and gun violence. And almost everybody who said they did not like what happened in Springfield blamed it on mental health. So if you're going to say that that problem is a mental health problem, we need to fund mental health. So you got to put your money where your mouth is. This is a serious problem. And yes, it's come to McHenry County already, but who knows what's going to happen? Yes, I would like more data from the Mental Health Board. I think it would be wonderful if we could know statistics and costs and number of people served and a per person rate if possible. But also think about 10 years ago, my son went to preschool, and there was a woman there who took her 2 children out of one of the worst parts of Chicago and came out to Crystal Lake. And she was trying to make a better life for her kids because she needed to get out. Her brother and her uncle had both been killed by gang members, so she was trying. But you know what? She couldn't have a job because she had sickle cell anemia. So she was getting her kids in Head Start. She was getting her kids in a preschool that would be free for her. And those children didn't have a ride. So my friends and I took those kids and drove them to school every day and back. But she still did not have the help she needed and ended up passing away. And those children had to go live with her sister. So there's a lot of stories we can hear. And I don't think they're just emotional pleas. Those are people's life experiences that we need to know and understand. It's not just, oh, this happened to this person we don't know. It is real stories. And I would like to request that Lou tell the story about the break. Is that okay if she speaks? It's just
Not yet.
But I would like her to tell that story that she told in public health that happened. It's a story about happened with the break, and the break is something that is funded by the Mental Health Board. So that's all I have to say right now.
Going around.
Okay, well, I'm trying to, first of all, a couple things, and so many people have said some things, and I don't have a prepared litany of things to say at this point. I thought we were going to have a discussion, which is what we're doing. I do feel like, to get to Brian's point in terms of the reporting, that this is something that we haven't asked for in the past. I don't believe that it's something that, I mean, to frame, I don't think that you are. I think you're trying to suggest that this is good data to have. It is if we want certain information, it's, we need to ask for it. And if they haven't provided it, then we need to be asking. So it's a good ask. It's something to have going forward. The unfortunate thing here is, and I'm sure in talking to some members with Mental Health Board, clearly over the last 4 or 5 years, we have not been getting the message of the increasing need and the dire straits that we were facing and where they were headed in terms of their fiscal emergency, which is really what this is. The RTA has a fiscal cliff. We're trying to deal with getting our own levy up so that we can fund operations going forward. And so I think that by not coming forward on a regular basis and doing that incremental increases that Member Sagar is talking about, we're hit here with a very high ask. And I know that there was a conflict in terms of, they come up forward with the full 2.5, or do we come in with something less? I think the vote itself created a little bit, like whatever the vote was in terms of coming out of the mental health board, was seen as not everybody being on board, but my understanding is everybody was on board that they need the 2.5. What they were conflicted with was how much to ask for, because it was a big ask and it was putting this board in a difficult position. But they felt in the end the need to let us know that hadn't been articulated well enough in the past, that their need has grown to a crisis point. And so here we are faced with what do we do? How do we get them back on their feet? At the same time, we've been struggling as a board to get members to understand that at some point, and Member Sagar did talk about this, at some point we have to understand that we have these services that we provide, and with inflation, which has been horrible over the last several years, we can't cut our way out of and find ways to reduce costs. I mean, we can. We should still be doing that. And I think staff continues to do that. And I would say that I think it's been 13 years of a flat levy, right? And I think at the beginning that was an easy ask. We had places we could cut. We had efficiencies that we could find. We could, and then add in that the fact that the inflation rate was flat. So not a huge thing when you have areas that you can cut. So they did that. They looked at what they were doing. And I have no skin in this game. I wasn't here. So whoever was here, that was the move. I'm not trying to toot my own horn. It was members who were here and the staff that has been here right along to make this happen. So as, and having been on another board, I do hear things like, well, this is a terrible time. I mean, think about the 2007, 2008 downturn, right? That was not a time to increase taxes. That was horrible for taxpayers. This is not the time to raise taxes, right? So the levy has been kept flat. We brought in a county coordinator so that we could work with other municipalities to make sure that we were reducing our costs, find efficiencies. We've got a great municipal partnering initiative. They've had their first expo. They find ways for not only the county to reduce its costs, but to spread those savings to municipalities so everybody in the county is getting more bang for their buck. We have other areas that I know staff is looking into to expand that program to make it even more effective. And we've been able to keep a flat levy through these measures, but the fact that the inflation rate has been low has made that an easier ask, okay? We are at a point where, and this is something that you've been trying to articulate for a couple of years now, that if we don't grow that levy, and I'm talking here at the county level, if we don't grow that levy, we won't have that capacity to sustain ongoing operations that people in this community expect us to provide. And those ongoing operations are even to staff members to keep them going, the buildings that we maintain, but our infrastructure, our public health services, there's all sorts of things that we provide. And so that has been, so the idea being, we don't want to find ourselves 5 years from now in the same situation that the county, that the mental health board is in, is like, okay, now it's really a crisis and we now need $2.5 million. The ask last year was to do this incrementally so that it's not a huge impact on taxpayers, but we're still providing the services that they have come to expect and to rely on. I mean, part of what we're providing does help families to live better. Our roads allow for the transportation of goods and services, and people can get to work, and emergency vehicles can get through. We provide those things. So if there's other things that people feel that we're providing that we don't need to, then put them on the table. I do understand the difficulty and the burden on taxpayers. But one more year, I've honestly, I've heard, and I agree with that. I mean, I would love, is there something that we can do to kind of tide us over? But at some point, to your point, we do need to capture enough of a levy to support those operations going forward. And the mental health board is in no different situation than the county board is as a whole. So there is the conversation about the sales tax potentially coming up. That is something that's on the back burner because that's not going to change what they need today. And so I do think it's something that we should be exploring and really looking at what that means, but that's not going to help us today. I do think it's difficult because people hear things differently. I think that the members coming from the member agencies were trying to tell the numbers. They were not trying to tell sob stories, but they were trying to show the difficulties they have and the people they've had to turn away and the challenges they've been facing. Not to make it some big sob story, but to just, this is our reality. And this is the kind of situation that they find themselves in. And in some ways, we're really lucky that we have people who are willing to do this job for the little amount of money that they get. And the biggest problem is that the mental health board is having is one of the same biggest problems that we're having is retaining people because we don't pay enough. And if you think we don't pay enough, social service agencies pay practically nothing. You know, we're lucky that we have people out there who are willing to do that job. So I'm not sure that took us anywhere, but I just feel like there is the greater need out there, and I don't know how we keep putting it off.
Larry, any comments?
Sure, to Brian's point about the data, and I'm on community development grant board, so most of them that come before us do have the type of data. For instance, Consumer Credit was looking for some grant money. And they had right there 1,175 clients would be served by that kind of thing. So that data's there. And a few years ago, we had a spreadsheet on where they were getting all the money from different organizations, these different groups. And I haven't seen that for a year or two, but we had a spreadsheet, and I don't know that it showed clients, but it showed where the money was coming for these different organizations. So I think it'd be great if we could get that back in operation. The other point, I guess, is that meeting yesterday, there was one organization that was going to get an extra $100,000, actually two of them, because there was money that wasn't spent, so it was returned to the Community Development Grant Board. The $100,000 was great. It was going to go to Consumer Credit, but there was a consequence. They raised their ask another $20,000 because it was going to take another person to administer that money. It was for the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So with quick math, to me, $20,000, $100,000, that means we're going to have 20% in administration to dole out $100,000. And that's just unacceptable. It's too high to have a 20% administration fee. So, and there was another group, the same thing, that didn't take the funds because were going to have to put on another employee and they couldn't take partial funds. My point being, putting money at these things isn't always the answer. You got to look at how the organization is built. Do they have the staff to handle the money, or is it going to cost 20% administration fees to give them more money? So each one has to be looked at very individually, and I'm not sure adding extra money to the mental health board at this time is going to get us to that point without having that data, possibly. So if I'm going to get my name up there on that board, I'll go from 0 to the recommendation, because the recommendation of the 1.9% increase was maxing it out for me. Thank you.
Teresa?
So I should take my turn. There's definitely a great need in the county. There's definitely a great need in the nation for mental health services. And there are some things that we know this county needs, like treatment facilities. There's big projects that this county needs. And so I'm conflicted because for the last year, some people have heard me talk about this, and when I say some, I mean very few, that we need like a big infrastructure project to build treatment the facilities that we are missing in the county. And the mental health board, I don't think, is at liberty to make those projects happen. But I did put on our strategic plan, that's one of Scott's lists he sent out to us, that we need to start looking at that. So I acknowledge that there are big projects. I acknowledge that we have excellent agencies that are working hard, but I also acknowledge that there's an employment shortage. I had said to one colleague on the board, I think we could give them $20 million and it still wouldn't fix our mental health crisis. So I'm agreeable, if Scott's gonna put all of our names down here, I'm agreeable to whatever the board is agreeable in giving the mental health board. But I also think that the mental health board and the county need to think about how are we gonna address the very large needs that are infrastructure projects, not just piecemeal grants to the different agencies inside. And the other issue is that we talk about our tax levy. The majority of the taxes levied to us, property taxes, are for schools. And the schools are also addressing the youth crisis, the youth mental health crisis. And so we are putting money towards this. The schools are taking money to this, the mental health board is funding agencies to do this, and it's still not fixing the problem. So I have to agree with Larry that I don't actually believe throwing more money at the problem is gonna solve it. But I am agreeable to what the board's agreeable to in giving a levy to the mental health board. I think that there needs to be perhaps a collaboration between the mental health board and the county into what big projects need to be put into place and how are those going to happen. This is not that time, but the time should start in December. We should start looking at what are we going to do for funding the necessary infrastructure.
Okay, Mike, you haven't spoke yet. I'm sorry, I'm letting everyone speak.
I have a couple comments, and my brain kind of runs on a gray. I'm a facts, figures, and numbers guy. So when in any subject, if someone steps up and starts using the word crisis, I start asking questions. What's a crisis? And how does it start? What's the causation? So then I start to look for fact, figures, and numbers to back it up. I pulled up the 2022 McHenry County Health Assessment that I'm reading from page 51. Regards to mental health, it says risk-adjusted hospitalization rate for mental health is 17.6% lower in McHenry County than Illinois based on 2016 to 2020 average. Now, this data was gathered in 2020, 2021. Obviously, we've had major world events that affected mental health. But by and large, we can see that there's been some success in the county, whether it's driven by the mental health board or other issues. The suicide rate, I sat down with the executive director of NAMI, who's also over the suicide task force. The suicide rate has gone up. In 2020, we had 25 in the county. 2021 was 39. 2022 was 45. The biggest jump in the suicide rate was in males. Matter of fact, males make up between 74 and 94% of suicides in the county. In the county. And the age ranges for those in 2022, which was the big jump from 29 to 45, the biggest jump was in the age of 21 to 39, and the age of 55 has gone up on a year-to-year basis. So to Member Sager's point about data that helps us quantify what the need is, what I've heard over the past several months, and I believe having access to mental health care is important. To say that it has affected every family in the county is accurate, especially in the past 3 years, driven by the pandemic and the actions that were taken to deal with the pandemic. And I'm trying not to issue judgment on how I feel about those actions, but to not take a look at causation, not take a look at what the need is and how we need to address it, other than just to have providers come forward in a pull scenario and say, we need more money. I don't think I can support an increase. I can support a flat levy. I might be able to support, a flat funding amount. I might be able to support a larger funding amount based on increased costs. But until we get to a point that we have data, and the mental health board is really addressing it from a pull scenario, we have three arms that they service. It's substance abuse, behavioral health, and developmental disabilities. So if the biggest pull at a particular time is behavioral health, that needs to be addressed, rather than mental health providers coming forward and asking for money. Again, I appreciate what they do, but right now I don't have the data to support a large increase.
John?
Well, I'm glad that we started to get into a little bit more of a business discussion. I thank you, Carolyn, for it seemed to start with you. In my opinion, you talk more about facts than emotions, because I think as soon as you start pulling on the emotions and you get away from the business sense of it, it's easy to just cave. You know, it's, just whatever you need, without facts. And I think that without getting a full accounting of how many people do we serve, how many people are we curing, where are we going? And I just see so much duplicity in services. In my mind, I see consolidation from a business stance. You just have too many people trying to reinvent the wheel, I think, but I'm not in that business. But as I look from like a business sense, the corporate is up 1.82%. The average totals is 3%. That's like 200,000 to 300,000 of an increase. And without stats, I can't see, $500 to $1 million increase in an almost $11 million budget as it is. I could see, give them 12, that'll fix it. Exactly what you were saying, Teresa. So I guess if I were going to be put in a range, I would probably go with Mr. Smith, 0 to 525. And if you look at the stats of what's on our increases, it's $200,000 to $300,000. If you look at it just from a business point of view, 1.82% is 199,000, and 3% of our totals, which is on we're looking at our bottom lines, would be about 330,000 or something. So just looking at it from a statistical point of view, my opinion.
That would be down 200, because 0 is effectively an increase of 525,000.
Yeah.
Jim?
Well, it's 4.78 if you look at the variance. That's what I was shooting.
Jim?
525.
Jim?
Okay. I just wanted to make sure you got everything in. And I wasn't sleeping, so. I have made it no secret that coming on this board, I've always said everything has to be sustainable. And for the first time this year, I'm not going to come forward. I've given my word that I would not come forward last minute and say we need the flat levy. And part of that is I'll give you my reasons on that. But part of that is the presentations that have been made this year are far and above, exceed anything we've ever had for presentations to the board. I think we all it's been very obvious what we need, and we've been able to ask those questions. Okay, and today, I really respect being able that all of us have been able to participate in this. And I'm going to agree with John and Larry and a couple of other ones on the 1.9
1.95% is my ceiling for me to vote for a budget. Where that money comes from, a give or take, and that's the first time I've been willing to go up. And I'm going to tell you the reason why it's the first time I've been willing to go up from a flat levy is because we need to find other revenue sources. So I agree the sales tax issue possibly for funding mental health in the future, but that's not this year. So we got to do something. So it's not this year. Also, when you look at our presentation that we got last Thursday, in 26, when the ARPA money's gone, we have a $2 million hole each year that's coming at us. So therefore, I can partially justify my 1.95% to build up to that point. We don't build up by giving additional funds other than what was presented to us, to some of these groups. Now, on the mental health board issue is, I went to a couple of those meetings. I went to their finance meeting when they were talking about the budget and what they were going to present. That committee recommended $600,000. Those board members, that passed that committee for $600,000, which is more than what we're requesting. And I thought at the time, I could live with that $600,000. They do need it. It got to the board floor when they passed their budget, and there was a whole bunch of discussion and everything else, and their budget passed 5-4. Okay, so their budget wasn't a great overwhelming ask for the $2.5 million. The point is we could do it the $600,000, a couple of their comments were, but we need to ask for more money. So therefore, my ceiling was that $600,000, and right now, that $75,000 doesn't make a difference, because that's when you're talking this kind of money. If the group wanted to go to that $600,000, I wouldn't object to it, as long as we stayed in the 1.95. So, but my problem with the whole scenario, and I've said this over and over, all of this needs these discussions about pushing people to ask for $2.5 million. A lot of that was done behind closed doors with 1 or 2 board members. When we had a board liaison, that's where all those discussions should have come through, was our board liaison and a meeting with our entire group also. And I'm not saying the board liaison should have led that. I'm saying the board liaison should have been able to, or should have been permitted to bring us all together in a special call or something to talk about this needs. And that didn't happen. And I've said I would not meet, and I had told members of the mental health that I would not meet alone, that our questions should be asked at the committee of the whole and of that board, and they should answer those questions for the entire board so that we can make an educated decision and not be here today because we'd be able to make that decision. They could have asked a bunch of questions to what you guys all said today, which were problems. They could have asked questions about that financial accounting. Maybe they haven't. Well, we don't know because we weren't able to ask that question in public. And I'm not going to ask it in private. I want to ask it in the public because I want that answer to be more than one person heard that answer. And in a public meeting where that answer is recorded. I think there's been too many back and forth, different scenarios that flat out, I won't call them lies, but misrepresentations of why they need this money. And that opportunity was last Thursday, and the person that should have answered those questions left the meeting. I don't think that was professional, and I don't care what the reason was that you asked the meeting, because I hear other things. My problem is that's when that discussion should have took in front of all the board members, in front of all the staff, so that we could have that discussion. At that point, before that, I was willing to try to work a way to move up from that 525. I'm no longer willing to do that. And I think that's the maximum that should be given at this point. The 1.95 is my maximum to even vote yes for a budget. I voted no for budgets before, and I'll vote no on this one again. And I just don't think we're spending our money properly. They bring up people can't pay their bills and everything else. Remember, this is a vicious cycle. When you take this raise of 2.5%, which is being proposed, you take this raise, it goes down to the taxpayers of their property tax. They brought up about property rentals. How does a property owner who's renting his property to someone who's making $15 an hour, how does he recoup and make some money? He recoups by raising his rent. So it's a vicious cycle that we get in. And I don't want that cycle because the schools are gonna do it and everybody else is gonna do it. Teresa Mesh has brought up a really good point, is there's other agencies besides our mental health board that are providing some of these services, especially with our young people in the school districts. They're spending a lot of money for this too. And so is everyone else. So I would say, being that we don't have the answers for the financial senior service, when I was on that committee, they used to present their financials, and I thought it was on a quarterly basis. And I don't know if they still do that.
They do to staff.
They do to staff, okay? I could ask that question then in front of the senior grant when we had it. Have they presented? In fact, there was one group was asking for a big ask on that commission at that time, on that committee, was asking for a big ask. They hadn't given their financials for over a year. Their funding got cut, I think it was in half because of that. And I'm surprised actually the committee actually gave them any funding other than they really, really did need it. The other thing is one of the board members of the mental health board in their meetings had brought up, he voted no on their budget. And he had brought up about reviewing all of the groups and what could be consolidation and look at all the rocks to turn over basically of where they could find money or best consolidate services so that you're not paying duplication. I agree on one thing also that was said was the groups, you kind of need a list of how many of these groups are also being requested, and I don't object to it, being funded by senior grant service or some of the other county fundings. I think Larry brought that up. There's some of them being funded. So the other question that I think is a requirement to me, should be, is a group, one of the main questions should ask, if you don't get funding from the mental health board, can you survive? Can you survive? If you're solely depending on that funding, can you survive? And what percentage does that, at what point does it make you go under if your amount is reduced? I believe the mental health board went at this the wrong way. I think they got politicized in this. Let me tell you, it doesn't matter whether you're a Democrat, Republican, Independent, whatever, we're all crazy on things. We all need help at some point. We all need to help others. So I'm not saying a flat levy on that this year because of all those reasons, that with the inflation, that we don't even know what's going to hit us with this economy. The cities are breaking right now with the illegal immigration. The cities are breaking. They're pushing that into the counties. Lake County accepted $1 million grant. Joliet has money in there, but I found it was the Joliet Township and not the city. It was in their opposition. So these things are gonna break our economy in the next year. We can live with it this year. We can talk about this sales tax. You can't do without the sales tax. We can fund this over a 4 or 5 year period if all goes great and everything else. If the sales tax wouldn't pass, if we put that referendum out there, and we find that's the way we'd want to go, and if it didn't pass, because there's no answer there's no guarantee that it would pass. But if it didn't pass, I could see myself committing as long as I went on the board, and that's the other problem is the board's turnover. We have a lot of new members this year. So $600,000 was a legitimate ask of the board's financial committee. That was very legitimate. That was reasonable too. It puts it above an 18% tax increase on that portion of the levy, of the share, I should say, of variance, 17.75. So it puts that up there as justifiable, but it's not justifiable to go for 2.5. It's not justifiable for me to go to 800. We could build these up just like we've had to do with all these other levies that we've had. We did that. I could see someday we'll have to come back and ask for a levy increase for Valley High. For the liability, we've had to come back because that's been bled over the years. Transportation, been bled to death to where they couldn't even, they were way out of line, they were in the negative. So I'm sorry for my long rambling on this, that's my problem, I get rambling. But I hope I can justify to you why we should not go any higher than our 1.95, and we should not go any higher, to me, the 600,000 if you hold the 75, because that's what their finance committee looked at and responsibly said they should take. Also, they did vote to include their fund balance in their agenda, and I don't know if that's changed, in their, they had like $1 million to $1.5 million fund balance that they included in next year's budget. So it wasn't just the 2.5, that fund balance was also in there to spend on these organizations. I don't know if that's still in there. Couldn't ask that question that day. Is that still in there?
Yes.
Okay, so it's still in there. So they're not getting 525, they're actually having an increased spending of $1,525,000 or $2 million if that was 1.5. What's the number right now today?
We put in, I believe, 1 million fund balance, but we have had that in our operations for a couple of years now, so it's not an increase because it's just the same that we've had each year.
But didn't you include that in your balance to spend it though?
Yes.
You included that to spend it.
Is there anything else?
No, that was one of the questions. I had several to ask that day, but that point is past and returned.
Okay. Pam, last one?
I have nothing to add that hasn't already been addressed.
That's the best words I've heard today. So I don't want to do any more, no.
Can I defer my time to Ms. Greeno?
No, I'm not the legislature. So we kind of, everyone has kind of had a chance to speak a little bit. I'd like to try and figure out, as I said at the last meeting, I'd like to try and get to a point where we need 10 votes, right? I feel as my responsibility as chair to try and figure out where we can acquire 10 votes to pass a budget. I don't feel that meeting where we have a bunch of motions and seconds and then, votes to try and change things is very productive. It becomes confusing for the members because the question becomes, what are we voting on? And the motions, and then people are trying to make motions after the ready motions. And it just becomes very challenging for the chairman to try and run the meeting. Yeah, well, we get motions and seconds, and then people try and make amendments to those amendments, and it becomes a problem. So after hearing everyone's comments,
No,
yes,
I had comments and I wasn't able to complete my comments.
you weren't, because you had spoken once. I allowed everyone to speak once.
Briefly, and then things were stated that were not true, and now there's no chance to add to that public record.
Not at this time, Terry, no. I'm not allowing you
Well,
to.
just don't say that you've allowed everyone to speak, because you haven't. You've not allowed me to speak.
I did allow you to speak. You're asking to speak twice.
I am asking to speak twice, absolutely.
Right, and I'm not allowing other members.
And respond to some of the things that were said that were not accurate.
Okay. Your opinion, thank you.
Hmm.
So,
I'm on the Finance Committee, Mike.
you are, Terry.
Really?
As of right now,
Where do I
you are.
speak, Mike? Do I have to go in as public comment at the cow?
Terry, I don't think you're being fair.
I don't think you're being fair.
Do the members of the Finance Committee want Terry to speak again? I've not allowed anyone else to do that, but if the committee feels like that's fine, then I will allow that.
10 seconds.
Okay,
I think comments at this point should be limited to the Finance Committee.
that's fine. Go ahead, Terry.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I want to tell you too, I appreciate all of the comments this morning, because for many of us who are new to the board, it helps a lot to get the perspective. And a lot of things have been said, a lot of good points have been made. And I wanted to pull those back and just basically respond to some of them. Because with what Member Sager said about making presentations, that has not happened with this board at any point, or the Finance Committee, and yet we would go on ahead and increase a levy without having that data. Also, we know that there's been a purposeful spend down of general funds from the Mental Health Board on capital expenditures versus operational. That's a matter of record with them. When the property taxes increase, it devalues the assets of the residents of McHenry County. Nationally, right now, over the last 20 years, Idaho and Montana has experienced a 177% increase in their property values. Texas and Florida have experienced a 113% increase in their property values. Now think about that. That's revenue. So our taxes could be on that increased valuation of the property. Kentucky and Indiana have had a 33% increase on the valuation. Illinois, over the last 20 years, 13%. So what we're in fact doing when we increase these levies is stealing from the assets of the taxpayers of McHenry County. And we're cutting off our nose to spite our face, because then their assets don't increase in valuation. And many people are paying more in property taxes than they originally paid for their home here in McHenry County. The comment about 22 veterans a day dying, that's a national number. Also, as regarding wages not increases. So from 2016, the entry-level wage in McHenry County was $12. Right now, it's $17 to get someone to work. We've had a 33% increase in the last 7 years in wages in McHenry County. And additionally, it's not our job to build the case for the Mental Health Board. It's their job to present the case. So we had 13 years of a flat levy. That was also a time when we had none or very little inflation. Right now, people still have mortgages with 1% to 2% interest on their mortgage. Those mortgages are going to have to be refinanced. There are economic reports right now where we are going to be hit with another 2008 recession situation, with interest rates going as high as 23% for people who are going to have to refinance. So pay them off now. everybody. So the board has a lot to do over the next year to prepare for increasing a levy. But we are not prepared as a board right now to do this. In our strategic plan, it says that each of the committees are to look at what they are responsible for and see what is going on. Is there any replication? Are things out of date? You know, what are we doing with the monies? And there has not been any time for that. That has not even begun. We could get down to it and do our work over the next year so that we could come with an actual data-based, knowledge-driven budget. And for now, we are simply not in a situation that will do any good for anybody to increase this. Additionally, last thing, we were originally presented with a 5% maximum increase in the levy, which would give us $4 million. 2.5 of that was mental health board, 1.2 was transportation, and the rest was going to veterans and seniors. The 2.5 being taken off the table for the mental health board brings it down to 1.5. We increased the gas tax, bringing in the 1.2 for transportation, giving an additional 1.8 relief to the general fund because that's going into transportation. 3.3 cents adds up to $3 million. And so at the very least, we'd have a $300,000 that was needed, but we actually, from that number, we have 1.5 million. And so it's just something where we need to not increase the levy. We need to not increase the growth this year. Thank you. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
So after hearing what everyone had talked about, I had a thought that I'm going to float out to the committee and the other members present. I just want one thing clarified. There was a discussion about mental health needing some technology that was, and I don't recall exactly what that dollar amount was. That was a supplemental, that was a request, correct?
Yes. 507,000 total.
That wasn't just the oh, okay.
270.
270?
Yes, for the non-personnel.
Okay. And so here's what my thought is. That 270 is a non-reoccurring expense. As I've spoke numerous times, I'm not in favor of increasing things for reoccurring expenses and using funds for one-time fixed costs. So what I propose to committee and to the other members present would be to, for the 270, 270 of one-time fixed costs for mental health board would be to utilize interest expense from ARPA to pay for that. That is discretionary on behalf of the board. It doesn't fall under ARPA reporting. I am not in favor of increasing the 1.95 that was recommended. So I'm making my point clear that that's where I'm at. But for a large group of people that are interested in increasing mental health funds, if we were to take the 270 out of as far as their budget in regard to one-time fixed cost, and they could utilize that on services, we could use the ARPA interest to pay for that. It'd be one time, we have the funds to do that, it wouldn't affect the budget, it would give them an additional $270,000 that can be utilized on services. All of the comments that were made about the reporting, the process that is used to bring budgets to us. I mean, we had a problem with Conservation District, and we made changes to their whole process because of the problems that were going on. There's no reason why we can't follow that same thing what we did with Conservation District with mental health. So I think those are all great ideas on how we can try and move forward with with that. So I'm just throwing that out there as a trial balloon, as a thought process. I'm not in favor of going above the 1.95. So that's my solution / idea on how to go about trying to give a little bit more to mental health for actual services, and in turn, keep the budget at the CPI of 1.95. I'm gonna go to committee first.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm not on committee, so
Yeah.
I'll defer.
So you're recommending 525 and then the additional 270?
Correct.
Okay. I want to ask the mental health board, how long would it take you to come up with facts and figures and reporting to give us if we requested that? Is that something that you could have by the cow? I know it's a lot of information.
Yes.
Okay. So I guess the question is, if people saw the data, then they need to think about if they would be willing to increase it over 525, because that's what we've been talking about.
I'm gonna answer for myself. No, to me, that's not where I'm at. I think the data is needed, and I think it goes back to the process by which information flows from mental health board to the full county board, not just, a liaison, not just a committee. And to me, that's something that needs to be fixed moving forward, but that's not gonna influence my decision as far as.
That's fine, I respect that. I just wanted to put that out there. I also want to say that I apologize for being emotional earlier. I deal with some of these populations when I volunteer, so I see the need. But just a reminder, that the ultimate goal is to reduce the wait lists. And I don't think that 4.78% here is actually going to do much for inflation to help do much more than just pay for inflation. So if we're trying to actually increase services, I'm not sure if the 4.78 is enough when you factor in inflation.
So you didn't comment on my thought process, which is what I was looking for, but.
I'm willing to go above 1.95.
Okay, so that didn't answer the question.
What's your question?
My question is my thought process, I'm trying to figure out, again, how to get 10 votes.
And Mike, you're keeping the levy the way it was presented, but you're freeing up $270,000 for additional services.
Correct.
For one
restate
year.
For 1 year, correct.
That's a one-time, just like it's a one-time thing out of the other, it's a one-time thing. But that doesn't deal with the services on a long-term basis.
Well, and again, I think there are other avenues by which we can address that going forward, and I think the whole discussion with the sales tax is a discussion that needs to happen, answer a whole bunch of questions, and that's not for discussion today, but I think there's areas that have to be addressed going forward. Go ahead, either one.
Well, I'm ready to place a motion on the floor, if you will allow that.
Well, I'm having this, I know, but I'm just having discussion right now. We're gonna get to the ordinance.
Okay, well, with respect then, I request the opportunity to make a motion at the appropriate time.
I will be happy to do that.
Thank you.
All right, I do know that, obviously, the $270,000 is not helping in terms of providing services or meeting the need that they're asking for. It is a one-time thing, and you know that, you stated that. So I do agree with that. I mean, I think if that's something regardless, I think that the fact that that would be there for that purchase and their needs, that would be, I would add that in. Jim mentioned going up to 600,000. I don't know, if we're going to go to a minimum, I don't know why we wouldn't go to the 600,000 as a minimum. And then to Kelly's point, it still doesn't meet, it's not going to meet, they're not going to be able to match their current obligations just because of the fact that this isn't even as high as inflation has been, to Kelly's point. But in being realistic, I mean, we got to get this thing over the finish line, so.
So I'm agreeable to the 270,000 coming out of ARPA interest. As I spoke briefly to in my comment, that I think that we need a bigger discussion about infrastructure projects. I think that, I know there's a concern that the 270 is only for 1 year time, but I would like to see collaboration between the involved entities, which would include another one that I won't mention now, but I even talked to that administrator about this. Looking at how can we get the needed treatment facilities into the county that are necessary. But that is a hope of mine, that we would get that project in motion in the next coming years, so that there'd be more. It's 270 right now out of ARPA interest, but I could see a future where there's infrastructure investment from the county for building the necessary facilities. So I'm realizing I did a count on the board. It's effectively, Mike's suggestion is effectively making it like a 7.95, which does not meet the desire of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6, because I'll count myself as part of that group too. But actually, we also know there's probably one that's not here that would count, so 7. There's 7 people who would probably still want a bigger increase than the 5.25. So if you count 5.25 and 270, people really want another 100,000, probably 6.2. The 600,000 maybe would be more agreeable. Plus the 270.
Still not the majority.
It's still not majority. Well, right, because it's hard for me to gather, and we'll hear where the people who were the no increases and the up to 525s would fall into the 10 count.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Just because that's where I was going, look at the board.
Yeah.
Look at the board. I mean, look at the board.
Yeah.
Again, I value everyone's opinion and comments, but there they are.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything more that we can say. I think the majority of the people that are here in the room, and I think we can look at the 3 who aren't here and kind of guess where they may go, but there's not support. So I would look at you, Mr. Scala, Chairman, and say thank you very much for the recommendation. I certainly could support something like that.
Yes, Larry.
To the point of using the ARPA interest for 1 year, for these 1 year costs, I think that's a fine idea. And because I do think there's going to be serious discussion about the sales tax and getting the mental health board to finance through a sales tax in the future. So this helps for 1 year, and if it gives us some time to review the sales tax option. And I would do the 270 from the ARPA interest and agree to the $525,000 increase. And that's where I'm at, in agreement with you. Thank you.
Okay. Brian?
Could we ask Carrie to run this, please, at 2.0 CPI? New growth plus 2.0.
That would be 560. 560, 791.
Okay, what brings us up to 600 or 650? That brings us up to 600.
Do you have anything else?
Yes, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay, well, hold on 2 seconds here. What?
I'll just say I'm where I'm at. That doesn't work for me. If we're going to use the ARPA interest money, the 525 is the max.
Okay, that's fine. So I'm we're just discussing, and then I'm gonna let Brian make his motion, so.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering if you were willing to amend what you were asking for and go to the 600,000, but if we have members who are not.
I am not, no.
Okay.
But that's fine. Okay, any other discussion on committee? Okay, so Brian, go ahead.
I move that we approve a levy for taxes for McHenry County, Illinois for the fiscal year December 1, 2023 through November 30th, 2024 to 2.05 with the conditions placed for, with that additional money going to Mental Health Board and the conditions as proposed in writing on the document that I previously provided.
Anything else?
So which one are you in your original proposal?
Yeah, it's 2.05, which brings us to the
It's what's up on the screen right now.
Okay, so not what's on here, but what you just discussed.
I don't think we have the votes to go that way.
Correct, right, I just want to be clear, thank you.
Okay, so Brian made that motion, is there a second? Teresa seconds that. Any discussion on that? The only thing I'm gonna ask you is you didn't say anything about the 270, so I'm assuming that's off the table for you then.
No, it's not off the table. I think that we should be going at 2.05 and then add the 270. That's,
Okay, but you didn't say that as part of your motion, so that's why I was.
well,
I think you amend it.
I look at it as two different issues. I think we have to have a motion for that. I think that's a different action, personally. But if you wish to include that, I will include that in the motion.
Well,
That's the easiest thing to do.
for budgeted purposes, it would have to be included for what we're talking about.
Then please add that to the motion.
Okay.
And I agree to second this
Okay.
motion.
All right.
Can you repeat that, please, then?
So it was the same motion, he's just adding the 270 for the one-time
One time.
costs,
ARPA interest.
using ARPA interest as a funding source for them.
So can I just make a comment? That the 270 would affect the appropriations ordinance, and the 2.05 would affect the levy
Right,
ordinance.
but I'm just trying to,
Okay.
because there's
That's
two,
why he said.
We
Yes.
understand
Okay.
Right.
That's why I wanted to separate it, but at the same time, it doesn't.
Okay.
because they go hand in hand with each other, so
Yes.
it's just, I mean, at the board floor, we made the motion doing both of them at the same time, and this is no different than what we'd be doing here, so. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on that?
Can we just make a comment? One comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
If you go up to a 2.05, I think you jeopardize failing your budget. And I feel you're being greedy to do this.
It's a motion and a second,
That's what I'm saying, I'm just putting that, pointing out, on the board floor, I feel you have a chance to fail your budget.
Okay.
I have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
Over the last few weeks, I have exuberantly engaged every resident of McHenry County asking if they would like to see a levy increase in any form or fashion on their property taxes this year. Unanimously, to the person of every age, sector, background, income level, is no, they do not want a property tax increase of any form or fashion this year.
I mean, to that point, I was talking about this with some of my friends about this, because I think I have a position that upsets some of my closer colleagues on the board, and that I haven't been a more adamant supporter of giving mental health board the full 2.5 or even the $1 million. And so I talked to my constituents about this. They said, give them the whole levy, give them $73 million, which was of course an exaggeration that I didn't believe. But you haven't talked to everybody, because.
No, everyone that I have met, I have engaged, that's a resident of McHenry County, that's what I said.
Are you, this is not, Mike doesn't want me to say this, but, because he wants me to make a standpoint, I find it hard to believe that you've engaged all of your constituents. I think you've only engaged constituents you want to talk to.
Well,
Okay,
thank you for that, but actually not correct, because I didn't even disclose I was a board member. I was just asking general conversation of everyone that I met in the last several weeks that's a resident of McHenry County. Some I knew, some I didn't.
Okay. Is there any other discussion about the motion?
Agreed.
Yes, Larry.
I agree with what Jim said. And this is stretching it for me. And then to stretch it a little bit more at each time, a little bit more, it's just not happening for me.
Okay, that's fine.
All right, so can I say?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, because I was counting and I'm realizing I'm counting people that aren't on our committee. Yeah, my concern is, with the motion on the table and the numbers on the board, even if it passes out of committee, it's not passing by the full board. Right, correct? Yeah, right. Yeah, I know, I see the board. That's why I'm saying this. And the fact of the matter is, I don't know then what happens by pushing something and then somebody gets angry about it, and so now suddenly the 270 is off the table. So not only is the 600,000 not even an option any longer, now the $270,000 is taken off the table because now people are upset that it came out the way that it did. So, it's a frustrating experience. I think that we aren't where we need to be, even with the motion that's on the table, but I also want to be realistic about what we're pushing forward to the full board to make sure that we have a budget that at least gets through, because, pushing something that's not going to get through is not productive either. So I think I am clear on where I stand in terms of the support that the board needs. I do want to say about the conservation district. That was not a problem with what they were doing. They're an independent and not a completely fair comment, because like the mental health board, they are a separate governmental agency. The only thing that is required of this board is an up or down vote on their budget. And the problem that was experienced was the timing of their budget process. By the time they got to here, their fiscal year had already started. So we worked really hard to get that budget process back in place so that they are well ahead of the curve and can get that to the board. The other issue that they have is that they have to declare their levy in September. Their budget process doesn't start till, they don't do their budget until February. So, and with the mental health board, they are their own governmental unit. And so if we want some reporting, if we're not getting the reporting we wanted, we had a liaison, we could have gone back to her and said, this isn't good enough, or, where are the numbers, or this is what would be more helpful to us than a big thick packet of every thing that we were getting every month. So, so clearly this is not where they need to be, but I'm also realistic about what we're going to be able to pass forward.
As the maker of the motion, I want to emphasize that I think that all of these decisions are resolutions. We resolve to come together in consensus and to try to make the right decision based upon our representation. And I think that all decisions are, in fact, negotiations as we look at budgets. And we've heard various individuals comment. There are those who are totally in opposition, and I respect that position to increase at any level, and I'm grateful for that. But I also know that there are those who would like to go higher, and I'm grateful for that because the need has been identified and expressed. There has been commentary by some, my learned and good colleague Jim Kearns has indicated, that he'd go to 600,000. And that's what members of the Finance Committee of the Mental Health Board was recommending. I'm looking at trying to find that median point to where we can all agree here. And then it becomes a responsibility to move it forward. Our decision here today, regardless of the commentary, is not to make the decision for the board. Our decision is to make the decision for the Finance Committee. And then it's the board's responsibility, because we have members of the board who are not here and present and privy to these conversations today, and for us to supersede that dialogue, I don't think is appropriate. I do agree that obviously we're looking for the votes. We're trying to bring people together to consensus and resolution. But you do that through complete conversation by the entirety of the membership at the committee of the whole as this is presented. And if at that point there is no desire to move beyond the recommendation, so be it. But this committee has the opportunity to make a recommendation based upon the dialogue. And I think that I'm trying to find that middle point. Honestly, I'm going to put it forth to you. While I support a higher level, I knew that wasn't going there. I mean, everybody, you could look at me and say, you're crazy. And I was crazy, but I did it purposefully because I wanted to be able to position and then come back. I didn't want to go back as far as I've just gone back, but I think that that's appropriate because I'm willing to compromise in that situation. And I ask others to consider compromise and then bring it forward to the full board for their consideration. Thank you.
Okay.
So the motion, I'm going to leave the motion where it is.
Okay. One last thing.
Right, well, so I'm conflicted because I realized the whole goal today was to get to a point where we can agree, the cow can be less chaotic, right? Where it's a yes or no to this. And when I do the votes, I realize that the finance committee, it'll be a 4-3 vote, where we would even agree to the to Brian's original $1 million. The four of us would, and 3 of us would not. And that wouldn't happen either. So I do kind of want to meet your goal, which was to come out of here with something that's going to be agreeable to the board. I'm kind of trying, when I look at the board, I'm trying to figure out who will actually give on what they just said. Like who will say, fine, I will vote even though it wasn't what I said I was going to vote for. Right? So I know certain people who will not vote for anything less than they won't vote. They're not going to vote for this amendment because it's not high enough, right? And then we have people who are going to not vote for it because it's an increase.
In respect, I think that that's what happens too often in the public arena.
Right.
Is that we establish a false dichotomy. And that's not necessarily the way that it has to be. That's the purpose of this meeting. That's the purpose of the conversation at the committee of the whole, is to not think that it has to be one or the other. There's a lot of in between. And so that's what I'm trying to say is there is an in-between position. Let's try to work in that gray area and find the quote unquote sweet spot, if you will. I think based upon our discussion today, that sweet spot is just a little bit in between. And 2.05 is less than a 0.5 increase. It's 0.49% increase over what the recommendation was. I think that's a sweet spot. So, and I'm willing to challenge that with the committee of the whole meeting.
Okay, so we're going to go to vote on the motion, which is to increase the CPI from the recommended 195 to 2.05 and to use $270,000 out of ARPA interest for the 2 line items that were in the supplementals that total $270,000 as one-time computer security and computer fixes.
And we have to keep in mind what the 2.05 does.
Yes.
That moves it from
525 to 600. Okay. Carolyn, you're up first.
Yes.
Larry?
No.
Teresa?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Terry?
No.
Kelly?
No.
Mike is a no. So that motion fails. 4-3.
Would you like to see what the whole table votes?
No.
Okay. Just kind of curious.
I'm going to throw this out there. I'm dead set on the CPI being 1.95. Okay, that's where I'm at. To get to the 600, my question is would the committee be willing to allow administration someplace to find $75,000? Whether that comes from some other location in the budget, I'm indifferent to where that necessarily comes from, but we're talking about $75,000 in a budget this large. I feel pretty confident that administration can figure out, you know, you take a little bit from here, a little bit from there to get to the 600,000, but leave CPI at 1.95. Would the, yeah, go ahead.
No.
Okay.
I think it's fudging money, whether it's 75,000 or 700,000. You're fudging money, and I don't feel comfortable with that.
Okay, that's fine. Just, again, I'm just throwing ideas out there, so that's why I'm trying to, yeah, go ahead.
I would be comfortable. I also, because they, at a minimum, the mental health board did ask for $600,000 and we shorted them their ask, and they are a board that, independently came to that conclusion.
Well, technically, we're shorting them from the ask, which was 2.5. So anything short of 2.
But in terms of what Jim was talking about, which came out of their finances, that's fine.
Yeah,
Saying
I
I
mean,
was agreeable, I have a right to agree
No,
to
you're right,
that.
I hear you, I'm just,
Put the 270s in there too.
It's a one-time.
I would place on the floor a motion to increase the levy to 1.95% CPI. So it would be a motion then,
so what we recommended?
yeah, to provide for the levy of taxes from McHenry County, Illinois for fiscal year December 1, 2023 through November 30th, 2024 at new growth plus 1.95 with 525 going in to the mental health board and using the one-time $270 from interest from the ARP program to facilitate the one-time.
Am I clear then it's not going to 600?
No, it's
From
staying
in any
5.25.
fashion? I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second, any discussion on that segment? Okay.
So just make sure I'm clear, this is the recommended plan.
It's the recommendation that came to the committee, except for we're adding 270,000 we will pay for the 270,000 for the 2 supplementals out of ARPA interest.
Okay, just want to make sure I was
That's a
making
one-time.
the motion
Yep.
that I thought I was
That's
making.
the only deviation from what was presented as a recommendation.
Back to supplementals.
Okay?
That's what I'm
You
saying.
still okay with that?
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
We go to vote then. Larry, you're up first.
Yes.
Teresa?
No.
Brian?
Yes.
Terry?
No.
Kelly?
No.
Carolyn?
Yes.
And myself, yes. Motion carries. Okay. Thank you, everyone. You're welcome to stick around for the rest of our finance meeting if you'd like.
There's not much left.
I would like to say thank you to Scott for making everything so clear.
Yes, thank you, Scott.
We're gonna use some Untitled money to get a bigger board.
I do want to thank all of our other members that took the time to show up today, because that really helped to get your feedback. So thank you also.
Yeah, thank you.
And anytime y'all want to come to finance meetings, this is how much fun we have, so.
Guys are boring.
Make sure you grab a couple of donuts on the way out.
He promises donuts next time.
All right, we are on to reports. We did both.
That was fine,
We just put on the levy rules, we need to do the appropriation.
No, but that was both. Yeah, both, that's what, because that was.
Because of that, because the amendment.
Yeah, correct.
All right.
I didn't read that.
It's fine. Because that's how it comes through to the full board. The full board does it all in one motion.
But I'll reach out.
Make a motion to combine them? Then we can make a motion to combine them.
Pretty easy.
And the board.
We need to take the
Yeah,
roll
we
call
did.
vote on this because this is an item on the agenda and you can't just dismiss an item on the agenda.
I thought but your motion.
I read the first one. That's where I read. 8.1.
Okay,
So I'll be happy to make a motion.
that's fine.
We have
We
to
can
have
do
a
that
motion.
again.
We're doing a break right now? I believe 11:30, so.
I just had to stand up.
Oh, okay.
So that was when she asked about it, that was what I had commented, so that's why I was.
The issue was not double, the issue was whether we were talking about the new suggestion as one part and this 8.1 as a second part. That was the question.
Okay.
So this is, if we can continue, are we ready to continue?
Yeah, we can, I don't, we have,
We're still recording.
Carolyn, can you come back here real quick?
How much more do we have?
I don't have any formal report.
Good.
Well, that's fine, we're almost done, basically.
We will be. I move the body approve, the committee approves the annual budget and appropriations ordinance for the county of McHenry, Illinois for the fiscal year December 1st, 2023 through November 30th, 2024.
Okay. But you want that to be where the 270 is added into.
Correct. So it's actually gonna be 540 added to that, because we'll just transfer it to the mental health.
Right,
So that will go up by 540. The levy then would stay the same.
right.
The levy ordinance would be the same.
So,
And we won't need a separate action by the finance committee to use ARPA money in that budget approval.
Correct, yeah.
yeah, okay, so do you want to second that, Larry?
Yeah, we're separating them out so that they can be budgeted correctly, is that what we're
Yes,
doing?
correct.
I'm sorry, in the supplemental meeting,
We're dealing with 8.2 as a separate line item. I tried to include it as Brian's
got you.
motion, but
Okay.
we're clarifying that for practical purposes here. So-
Mr. Roberts rules.
Well, and it's fine, it's not a big deal. Okay,
He knows.
so is everyone clear what we're voting on?
no. Because I'm
You're
sorry,
putting
just
in
one thing.
8.2.
We're doing 8.2 formally, we did only technically we did 8.1
I
on the
gotcha.
first time. So
Okay.
we're doing the same thing that we did last time, just on the 8.2.
Did the numbers change?
So in order
They
to
will
do the
slightly,
transfer from ARPA to mental health,
Yeah.
we have to add that to the appropriations ordinance. And since it's both, it's two funds, it's double, so it's gonna increase by 540. In and out.
But the intent is the same.
Oh, I see.
Intent
Yeah,
exactly
this
the
is
same.
purely just on the,
Okay, all right, I was wondering what the 540 was, it's because it's too
so it's,
interesting, all right, I'll go with your, you don't need,
I'll
I
second,
accept.
I'll
Okay.
second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Teresa,
Yes,
Brian,
Yes.
Terry. Not here. Kelly,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Larry,
Yes.
myself, yes. Okay, motion carries. All right, reports. You have nothing, Terry?
no.
Okay.
I just want to thank, oh, sorry, I just
Okay.
want a quick comment. Thank you to all the all your good questions and comments and,
Thanks for your
Great
discussion.
yes, good discussion.
all right, thank you.
Contingency beyond everything, EDC, we have the annual dinner.
We have the annual dinner coming up in early November. The EDC board was to meet next Tuesday. We pushed that back another week as they're working on their strategic plan. So we'll have something to update you as we get into November on that.
Okay. Natural McHenry County,
Scott had to step away.
okay. Anything on, no? Okay. Then no need for exec, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn at 11:05. Carolyn, Kelly, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.